Today we'll be going over how to change a set of tires on your car. The tools you'll need for this job are a jack, wheel chocks, a pair of jack stands, a torque wrench, and a tire iron. A set of jack stands should always be used for a job like this. Don't rely on just the jack to hold the car up. For our video, we'll be using our hydraulic jack. A hydraulic jack is much safer and faster than the scissor jack in your car trunk, but if that's all you have, you can still use that as long as you're using jack stands to hold the car in the air. When you're ready to start, take your new tires and put one at each corner of the car. Something to watch for is some cars use different size tires front and rear, and some tires can only rotate in one direction, so you need to make sure you're putting the right one at the right corner. This set of tires, for example, has two that rotate clockwise and two that rotate counterclockwise. This one we're showing you here has a rotation arrow on the tire sidewall. The tire sidewall will also give you helpful information such as the tire size, maximum inflation pressure, the speed rating, and the DOT number. After the DOT number, you'll also find this 4-digit number that tells you when your tire was manufactured. The last two numbers are the year of manufacture, and the first two are the week of the year it was manufactured. Pro tip, if you're not sure about your wheel size or your inflation pressure, this information is actually on a sticker that you can find on the inside of your driver's door. When you're ready to start, make sure your car is properly parked or in first gear if it's a manual and the steering lock is engaged. Next, chock the two wheels that are going to be staying on the ground while you change the first two tires. Your owner's manual will have instructions on where the jack points and lift points for the car are. In our case, it's these two pinch welds on the underside of the car body. Before you start lifting, take your tire iron and break the seal on all the lug nuts on the two tires that you're going to be changing first. You aren't taking the lug nuts off at this step, you're just making sure that they're loose enough to be turned with the tire iron. Once you've located your lift points, you can put the jack in position and slowly raise it until it's touching the lift point. Because we're using a hydraulic jack, we can do the rear axle at once using the center lift point on our car. If you're using a scissor jack, the steps are the exact same, it just means you have to do one side of the car at a time. At this point, you can start to lift the car off the ground. The wheels don't have to be very high, just high enough that they're clearing the ground and you have enough space to get the jack stand underneath the car. As you're lifting, make sure to go slow so that the car doesn't slip off the jack, and make sure that your wheel chocks aren't sliding. Once the car is high enough, you can go ahead and place the jack stands on their designated point. You don't have to use a piece of wood like we are, but this helps if you want to avoid damaging the surface you're working on. Once your jack stand or jack stands are in place, go ahead and lower the jack completely. Once you're done doing this, there shouldn't be any weight at all on your jack, and it should be supported completely by your jack stands. To make sure the car is secure, do a shake test by pushing on the free end of the car that's in the air. If it moves at all or the jack stands are loose, you need to lift the car again and reposition your jack stands until the car doesn't move at all during this test. At this point, you're ready to switch out to your new tire. Using your tire iron, take off all of the lug nuts, and then once the wheel is free, lift it off of its hub. Before you put on the new tire, using a dry shop towel or a cloth, make sure there's no dirt or debris left on the threads. Don't use WD-40, a penetrating oil, or some other kind of lubricant on this step. If you had to use penetrating oil to get the lug nuts off in the first place, use a solvent or some other method to make sure that your threads are completely dry before you put the lug nuts back on. A piece of maintenance that's frequently overlooked is making sure your brake pads are okay. Since you've already got the wheel off, do a visual inspection of your pads. Lift the new tire up, line it up with the threads, and push it in firmly until it's resting on the hub. When tightening lug nuts, there is a specific pattern called the star pattern the nuts have to be tightened in. You can't tighten them in a circular pattern or in a random pattern, as this could lead to the wheel being uneven. You can mark this pattern on the tire bolt holes with a marker or a piece of chalk to remember the order. While still using the star pattern, wobble the tire back and forth on the hub with one hand while using the other to tighten the lug nuts. Once all the lug nuts are tight by hand, use the tire iron to get them a little bit tighter. We're still going to tighten them properly using the torque wrench with the wheels on the ground, so don't go super tight. Once both tires have been properly installed and the lug nuts are hand tight using the tire iron, you're going to lift the car off of the jack stand and then remove the jack stand with the car in the air. Once again, if you're using a scissor jack, you have to do this one side at a time, but because we have a hydraulic jack, we're able to do both at once using the central jacking point. Once both jack stands have been removed, make sure there's nothing in the way of lowering the car, and lower the jack to the ground completely. Now we're going to use our torque wrench to get the lug nuts to their proper torque spec. Torquing should be done in at least 2 stages to avoid over-tightening the wheel on one side. Our final torque spec is 86 foot-pounds, so we're going to do 43 foot-pounds first, followed by 86 after. Making sure to use the star pattern, tighten both tires at the first torque spec. Set your torque wrench to the second torque spec, in our case 86 foot-pounds, and then tighten both tires again using the star pattern to their final torque spec. At this point, the 2 rear tires are done being changed. Next, you're going to repeat the exact same procedure, but on the other 2 tires. Starting with chocking the rear wheels and going until tightening the lug nuts using the torque wrench, follow the exact same procedure and the exact same steps, just on the other 2 tires. Once you have all 4 tires changed, inflate them to their proper inflation pressure. Congrats! You've now changed all 4 tires on your car. However, you're not exactly done yet. After about 1 week or about 100 kilometers of driving, you should take your torque wrench and double check the torque spec on all of your lug nuts, just to make sure that none of them have worked themselves loose in the time that you've been driving.